Good morning. Guess where I am? If you guessed Disneyland, you were correct, but that's probably not a very hard question if you are watching all the videos on this channel. Today, I am testing out a new lens, kind of a new toy lens, literally a toy. It feels like a piece of plastic. I saw this thing pop up on my social media and I thought I'd give it a try. It's made by a company called Pocket Dispo, and it costs about $50, and they basically took the cheap little plastic lens out of a disposable point-and-shoot film camera and 3D printed a little mount for it so you could put it on your digital camera, and now you can make your thousands of dollars digital camera behave like an $8 piece of plastic from the 80s. So if that sounds cool to you the way it sounds cool to me, maybe check one out. So I'm going to show you how it behaves on my OM1 Mark II today. I'm going to give myself a little challenge. I'm only going to allow myself 24 shots because back in the day when you had to load film in these things, you got 24 shots. So I have the camera in single shot mode. I have it capturing a raw image plus a JPEG because you can use different artistic filters in the camera to simulate the looks of different types of film stock, different types of old cameras. I think that's going to be real fun. I'm out here on Main Street. I think the first thing to do is try to find a shot of the castle. Right here behind the partner statue is a nice frame up of the front of the castle, so I went ahead and grabbed that. I used the pinhole camera 3 setting. It's kind of this extremely old school looking filter setting, so it puts a massive vignette around the sides. It kind of fades out the colors and really warms them up. I found out the camera will also record video using some of these filters. So if you want to create some old-timey looking video, at least with the pinhole 3 camera, the video looks really jerky when I was recording it, and it might actually look jerky in the playback as well. So I'm not sure how useful the video is going to be, but I'd love to shoot some video of what these filters look like. It's listed as being about a 28mm equivalent focal length, which is a nice wide angle if I was shooting full frame. But since I'm shooting a micro four thirds sensor, it's going to behave more like about a 56mm lens. And then the aperture, it doesn't have an aperture, but it lets through an amount of light roughly equivalent to what they say is f11. So that is a pretty dark lens. With those parameters in mind, I have to kind of figure what's going to work. And I think what might work is a trip on the Jungle Cruise. So let's go snap a few shots on Jungle Cruise. All right, I think Jungle Cruise is the perfect match for this lens and the gentle sepia filter. So not only does it give you the color of the gentle sepia, but it's actually kind of moving kind of jerky, like a 16, 17 frame per second kind of old-timey camera. I think that's really cool. So I shot, I think I shot 9 frames on Jungle Cruise because there's a lot to shoot and it's my favorite ride and I love the way it looks in this filter. This first shot is just the little boat and the little hut across the lagoon from the boarding area. Same thing with this next one. I love this shot because there aren't a lot of people in the frame. This shot could be 50 years old. There's not a lot of modern looking stuff in this frame. The next shot is the Bengal tiger in the ancient Cambodian temple. Classic shot. I sat on the left side of the boat, so I was limited to kind of shooting the things that were on the left side of the boat. I got a shot of Ginger, the alligator, snapping at us. Shot of the Indian elephant bathing pool. I love how that came out. Today is kind of a misty day, so it adds a little bit of depth to the jungle. It makes it look more jungly. Another shot of the Indian elephant bathing pool. I like this open patch of sky, which combined with the fact that today is a misty, drizzly kind of a day, it's really adding a lot of bloom and it really makes this image really have that old school feel. And the next shot, looking up Schweitzer Falls. This is the first shot that really kind of shows off the drawback of having a 56mm focal length. By the time I got close enough where I could get a shot of the waterfall without the roofline of the boat in the way, we were pretty close and it kind of overflows the frame. And it's not perfect, but I kind of like it. And a shot of one of the African bull elephants, just a nice simple subject right there on the left side of the boat, easy to fill the frame with. With this shot from the hippo pool, it helps to have ridden the ride a couple hundred times because you know where the things are going to pop up out of the water and you can kind of have your shot framed up in the viewfinder as the boat is moving and you wait for things to happen while you still have the framing that you want. So I have the wrecked boat on the right side of the frame and I have the hippo on the left side of the frame and some bubbles in the middle. So pretty fun having to intentionally focus on what kind of composition I want and not just machine gunning away and shooting hundreds of frames and then picking the right one afterwards. This is a really fun photography exercise. I've been hoping for a chance to hop onto Big Thunder Mountain this morning because I would love to try to get a shot of the dynamite goat with this lens. I think that would look really cool. and it would be kind of a fun moving subject to try to hit. This lens doesn't have autofocus, so I'm not going to worry about missing focus, and the subject is far enough away, it'll be in focus. That's the way a lot of these cameras worked back in the 80s and 90s. They were called focus-free. The way they did that was by setting the lens, designing a lens that was pre-focused at what's called the hyperfocal distance. This is something that landscape photographers and astronomers use. So the hyperfocal distance is the distance at which everything from a certain distance in front of the camera to all the way to infinity is in an acceptable level of focus. The downside is this lens can't focus closer than about 5 feet. Anything closer than 5 feet is going to be blurry, so that's one of the downsides to this lens, is you can't use it for close-up photography because of that hyperfocal feature. That's how they get away with it being really cheap and having no moving parts. So as I was walking over here towards Thunder Mountain to see if it had opened yet, I saw the Mark Twain just getting ready to leave the dock, and so I framed up a really quick composition and I dialed on the pinhole camera #1 setting, so it's not as extreme and weird colors as the pinhole 3 setting that I used on the Castle earlier this morning. But again, it gave me a nice vignette. It kind of muted the colors, gave it kind of a vintage color. I'm gonna go see what I can do in Galaxy's Edge. What kind of an image can I get over there? So I tried something a little different for this shot. I wanted to get a shot of this archway, and so I put it into manual mode. I used the ND32 live neutral density filter setting, and I took a 1 second exposure. I wanted to try to create some motion blur and ghost a few people out of the image, or at least turn them into kind of vapor traily kind of look. It kind of worked. The people did kind of blur out in that 1 second exposure. I used that same pinhole #1 setting, and the only reason I used that setting was because I forgot that was the setting I had dialed on, and I was thinking so much about my time and my exposure settings that I kind of forgot that I was going to try out different art filters. So not the best image, but sometimes you experiment and things come out great, and sometimes you experiment and things come out bad. That's probably the first shot today that really came out bad. So 1 out of 12, that's what, 8%? That's not too bad. So I was just getting ready to leave Galaxy's Edge, and I saw Din Djarin and Grogu come out, and so I almost left because I thought this isn't the kind of lens I use to photograph characters, and it's really hard to photograph characters, especially here at Galaxy's Edge, because they're always surrounded by a crowd. But then I thought, let's experiment. What's one more image? So I used the Pop Art 1 filter, which is a really kind of saturated color profile. And I tried to get in close and just kind of grabbed a real quick shot when there was nobody in front of me. And it's got a little bit of motion blur because it ended up going at a 50th of a second, because I'm shooting in program auto exposure mode for most of these shots. I'm letting the camera decide on a shutter speed and an ISO. And usually it's been working for me for the most part. You know, the light levels are such where I can get a decent enough shutter speed to freeze motion and still keep the ISO relatively low, even though it is kind of dark and I am shooting an f11 lens. So, you know, my 2 shots in Galaxy's Edge were kind of experimental and not very good, but that's what happens. Back in the day, you'd pay, you know, maybe you'd pay $8 for one of these cameras, and you'd shoot your 24 frames, then you'd probably pay $5 to get the photos developed. And you're $13 into this endeavor, and then you realize half of them suck. Photography was expensive back then, so people didn't just rattle off hundreds and hundreds of photos all the time because they couldn't afford to. So over here in Fantasyland, I decided to grab a quick little shot of Dumbo here in the background. I got kind of close, and I tried to find a shot where all the different ride vehicles were at kind of different heights, and it kind of made a sort of an interesting composition. It's still a little cluttered, it's still a little busy, it's really not that great of a shot. I used the Pop Art 2 filter. It's a little less saturated than the Pop Art 1 filter that I used on The Mandalorian over in Galaxy's Edge. It's still saturated, but it's not just crazy oversaturated. So over here at Teacups, I figured I'd try to redeem myself with that really bad long exposure I did over in Galaxy's Edge. So I found a nice composition where in the background you can see the Storybook Land canal boats, shrubbery, you could see Monstro just a little bit. I had the Teacups in the foreground, and I did about a half a second exposure to blur out the teacups. I actually was able to brace the camera on the railing here to keep all the other motion blur to a minimum. And this one, I'm real happy with how it came out. I also used the Diorama 1 art filter, which I think tries to do like an artificial tilt shift effect. So I think that enhanced the blur in the foreground. So I'm pretty happy with how this one came out. So when I was planning this video out in my head, I knew that one of the images that I wanted to put in the video was a composition of the Matterhorn, but I didn't really know which composition was going to work with this lens. So after a little bit of walking around, I found a composition I really like, and I used the dramatic tone filter, which really boosts the contrast, which helped today. It helped the kind of mostly white and light gray mountains stand out against a mostly white sky. So that image really pops. I really enjoy this one. And now I'm going to try to make an image over here of the submarine lagoon somewhere. I'm just not sure where yet. So here's the shot I ended up with of the submarine lagoon. I found a spot where if I got really, really lucky, I'd be able to catch the monorail and one of the submarines in the shot at the same time. I decided to just take the shot with the submarine in the image and not wait for the monorail to come along, because trying to get those two things to line up, you know, where there's a submarine in the foreground and the monorail in the background, I might be here all afternoon, and I just don't want to spend that much time. So I really enjoyed the shot of the sub. I can't remember if I used the Diorama 1 or the Diorama 2 setting. They look identical through the viewfinder. And I found out that if you record video in the Diorama art filter, it gives the video kind of almost a stop motion kind of quality. So I thought that was kind of fun. I'm almost learning as much about different video modes that I can play with in the future as I am about the different photo modes. Some of these modes I think might be more useful for video than they are for photography. So that was shot number 17, and let's continue farther on into Tomorrowland, see what else there is to see here. All right, so the next shot is a real simple one. It's just this little green alien guy in the foreground with the Alien Pizza Planet logo in the back, and I used the just the standard number 2 vivid filter that I use for most of my stuff. So just a quick, simple snapshot. Let's move on. All right, photo number 19 is the Astro Orbiter here behind me. And I'm running out of filters. I think I've used up almost all of the cool ones. I'm left with something called Keyline 1, which is this weird cartoony thing. I remember it was popular in the 90s when Photoshop kind of was first becoming available to people, and they were just doing all kinds of weird, crazy stuff to photographs just because they could. So Keyline reminds me of that. I was so focused on trying to find a filter that I forgot to even wait until the Astro Orbiter rocket started to lift off. So as soon as I snapped the photo and brought the camera down, then they started to spin the attraction. So I got too focused on the filter and forgot to think about the composition of the image. So I only had one shot, and now I got 5 shots left. I have a few filters that I haven't used yet. All right, I found 2 different subjects for the Grainy Film 2 filter. I got one of the Adventureland treehouse. It's kind of nice, kind of a nice tall vertical composition. And I got another one of the ticket agent booth in front of the Jungle Cruise. And you can tell it's a seasonal photo because there's a little hand-painted sign in the window that says Hippo Holidays. So now I have 3 left, and it's 11:45. I usually try to get out of here earlier than that, so this actually took longer than I thought. All right, so photo number 22 on Main Street, just looking down the street at this Christmas tree at the south end of Main Street, and I used the Vintage 1 filter. I really like this Vintage 1 filter. I remember looking through some of my parents' photo albums and seeing a lot of images that had kind of that type of color tone, so I really enjoy that. And it makes cool video. I think this video is extra jerky, not because of any post-processing. The video is just because I was holding the camera with one hand over my head while I was walking down Main Street. Okay, I got shot number 23 in the bag. I used the Vintage 3 filter, and I wanted to get a shot of the horse-drawn carriage pulling passengers up Main Street. I like the color, I love the contrast, I like the vintage film grain, and this one feels especially vintage because I missed the moment by a split second and cut off part of the horse's head. And that's kind of the way things were back in the film days. You would shoot all these frames, and then you would develop the film, you would get your images back, and then you'd realize after you had come home from your trip, oh yeah, I cut off that horse's head. Like, that's not, you know, that good of a shot anymore. So it was fun to revive that little vintage vibe. Some of the things I forgot about shooting film. It was harder to come back with a perfect roll of film unless you really worked at it. Okay, so I got my last shot. My last shot is here, the firehouse with the Christmas tree in the window of Walt's apartment, and I used the instant film filter. So that's it. That's 24 shots in just about 3 hours, so about 8 per hour. So let's wrap up. This was a lot of fun. This is probably the most fun I've had taking photos in the park in a little while, because it was something super different and it was super creative. I had to really get creative and had to think about what shots I wanted. Some of these shots I've been thinking about for a couple weeks. Should you buy one of these Pocket Dispo or Retropia or one of these other plastic instant camera lenses? Maybe, because it takes away some of the crutches we've come to rely on in modern photography. It's not a wide angle lens and it's not a shallow depth of field lens. Those are two of the big creative tools that I like to use in my photography to create interesting perspectives, to create immersive images. You don't have either of those options. Everything has a really, really deep depth of field, kind of like a phone camera, and you have a fixed focal length. So you can't really play with focus, you can't isolate subjects as easily. So you have to really, really think a lot harder about your composition. So that was really cool. So I think if you combine a retro style lens with a place that has a strong vintage vibe to it, like a lot of Disneyland does, and then you also play with some of the film simulation recipes that a lot of digital cameras have today, those three things together combine for a really, really fun day. Just on the basis of that, I think this thing is worth it. I don't think I'm going to use it very often, but when I do, it's going to be something that's going to add a really, really unique feel to my photography. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got some ideas for spicing up your own photography, and I will see you in the next video.